Let's move on to the mile-and-a-half turf for the Breeders' Cup. This is an interesting race because you just had a bunch of star power sort of injected into this thing, one that was confirmed a couple weeks back that Enable would be coming over. We'll talk about her more in a little bit. Let's start over here, though, domestically. Kick things off with the big prep out on the East Coast. The Joe Hirsch Turf Classic at Belmont Park, you had a couple of big names in there, most notably Robert Bruce. Robert Bruce was the horse that had won the Arlington Million for Chad Brown. He had done a number of good things, and he looked like a legitimate runner. I guess a little bit of a question about a mile-and-a-half. Ultimately, he tried but couldn't catch up to Channel Maker. Here's the stretch run of the Joe Hirsch.
But here comes Robert Bruce on the outside. Jose Ortiz shaking up Channel Maker. Irad Ortiz on the outside with Robert Bruce. The two of them arrive in the final furlong. Channel Maker keeps on finding on the inside. Robert Bruce made a failed run at him. And Channel Maker is going to win the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic, going away by 4.5 lengths. Robert Bruce was second. And then it was.
You also had Sadler's Joy in there. To be honest with you, I feel like Sadler's Joy has lost a little bit here as he continues to get older. I don't know if he's 5 or 6 at this point. I think he's 5. I think he's lost a little bit on the fastball. Conversely, Channel Maker seems like he has turned a corner. Seems like this is a horse, and Bill Mott had said it exiting that race, exiting the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic. He goes, it's good that we got him out there because he has been kicking down the door, ready to go. And if you needed to wait another 5 or 6 weeks to get him into the Breeders' Cup, because I don't know if we can keep him sharp for that long, he needed a run. He ran a giant race. I said it then, I'll say it now. It reminds me very, very much of Beach Patrol's race last year. And I realize a lot of people have said, he's not Beach Patrol. Beach Patrol was better. Well, guess what? Beach Patrol was always a horse that was close, close, close. He would win some, he would lose some, and he was always running in that sort of 100-ish range from a buyer standpoint. Shows up in the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic. Believe there was a little bit of cut in the ground in that race as well, as there was here in this year's in 2018. And all he does is go out there and blitz the field and win and earn somewhere near a 110 or a 108 buyer. I believe that's what Channel Maker earned in this spot, and he parlayed that into a runner-up finish and probably ran too well to lose the Breeders' Cup Turf last year out at Del Mar. I'm not suggesting Channel Maker's going to win, but boy, I don't think you could ask for much more coming into the biggest race of his career than what you saw there. I think he's in raging form. I think he can adapt, whether it's firm or a little bit of cut in the ground, and he has some tactical speed, and that can go a long way in a race like the Breeders' Cup Turf. Robert Bruce, I think he's another one that if you throw him out, I think you're making a tremendous mistake. Again, I don't know that I'm totally convinced that a mile-and-a-half is his trip. I think he might be more of a 10-furlong type. Doesn't mean he can't win the Breeders' Cup Turf. I think he's probably best over firmer going. We'll find out what you get. The long-term forecast right now, looking at Breeders' Cup Friday and Saturday, it's about 50-50 on rain and somewhere in the high 50s, low 60s. So not god-awful as far as conditions are concerned. I mean, it might be a little bit chilly, but, you know, look, I have to be honest with you. I was fearful we'd be looking at 45 with wind. 60 with a little bit of wind and rain, I can deal with that. I was just in Scotland. It's like that every day. So I think there's a scenario where he would prefer Robert Bruce a little bit firmer going and perhaps a little bit of a shorter trip. But at the end of the day, I certainly wouldn't be throwing him out. And again, Sadler's Joy, I feel like he may have lost a little bit on the fastball. When you speak about Channel Maker, though, you can't help but also talk about a horse like Glorious Empire, who those two, they ran into each other on 2 occasions up at Saratoga. One was in the Bowling Green, one was in the Sword Dancer, and they dead heated in the Grade 2. Then they came back in the Grade 1, and it was almost a carbon copy. The difference was Channel Maker couldn't get to Glorious Empire. Here's the stretch run.
Glorious Empire still there in the Sword Dancer, set down for another furlong, trying to keep this lead. Channel Maker is 2 lengths behind in second. The others need to get going now. Spring Quality is third, and Glorious Empire still got run. Glorious Empire's gonna do it all the way under Julian Leparoux taking the Sword Dancer.
Now, the thing that makes Glorious Empire so interesting is he is confirmed speed. There is no two ways around it. He's going to be on the front, and he's going to take him as far as he can. Now, I think there's a real scenario that he is a Saratoga horse for course. His best races by far have come up at Saratoga. He's run well other places, but not nearly as well as Saratoga. The dangerous piece here is if you discount him and say he is proper horse for course, you could perhaps be giving up on a horse that is going to be dictating the pace in a race that probably doesn't have a ton of speed, and he's going to be at least 15-1. And he defeated Channel Maker, who's probably going to be half that price just on the fact, whether it's simply recency or whatever else you want to chalk it up to. I don't know what to make of Glorious Empire at this point. I have a feeling it is Saratoga that takes his game from here to here, but I don't know for certain. Maybe he's just turned the corner. They've trained him up to this. I think he could be a little bit interesting again, and he's one that I would be very, very concerned if I was alive in a pick 4 or pick 6 or whatever it is on Breeders' Cup Saturday, and I didn't have him, because I think he could get brave and wire that field. High Happy's also going to be running in this spot. To be honest with you, going into the Sword Dancer, I had mentioned it when we talked about it on Out of the Gate, and I had spoke with some friends. I personally think that High Happy was going the wrong direction leading into that race. Thought he ran poorly there. He came back at Belmont Park, ran a little bit subpar. I don't think he totally loves cutting the ground. I think he's better over firmer going. And to be honest with you, I don't know where he is as far as form is concerned. Now, he's been gone for a little while. That race was at the beginning of October, so he's had some time. But to be honest with you, he's just not one that I'm very interested in. I'd be interested when they go back to Gulfstream Park and maybe with a little bit of a freshening. But to be frank, I don't totally love his chances in a race like the Breeders' Cup Turf. By the way, that probably puts him in the winner's circle. And then we have to talk about the Arc de Triomphe. The dual Arc winner, Enable. She came into this race this year looking for her second victory in the Arc. She'd only started once. It was off of a long layoff, and it was over a synthetic racing surface. Who knew what version you were going to get? And she was going up against some good ones. You got the good version of Enable. Here's the stretch run of this year's Arc.
Go. Up the rail goes Nelson, leads from Capri. Frankie Dettori and Enable are poised. The lady in waiting as they head towards the 2 furlong and 400 metre mark. Enable and Capri are the first two. Then Salu and Tiberian. Sea of Class is making ground through the field. Enable is asked to go and seal the arc. Sea of Class has weaved all the way through with Cloth of Stars to chase, but it's Enable 2 legs clear. Well, by Sea of Class and also Cloth of Stars are closing down. Enable, Sea of Class is still coming. Enable and Sea of Class.
I thought she ran quite fine, and again, I'm going to bring it up. I brought it up, I believe, last week in the preview edition. You can go back and find that over on YouTube or video.drf.com or on Apple Podcasts, whatever. That you could make that parallel to American Pharaoh in 2015. And again, I want to say it was Dick Girardi, but I'm not totally convinced, and I don't want to put words in people's mouths. But it ended up proving correct, whomever this was. The idea that the Kentucky Derby in 2015 was the thing that got American Pharaoh tight and ready to go and able to produce those giant efforts in the Preakness of the Belmont Stakes, winning the Triple Crown. I think there's a case to be made that Enable, she needed the arc, because you saw her getting short at the end. She needed the arc to really get the screws tightened up. And now you're going to see the best version of her here when she comes over here to Churchill Downs. She can run on firm, she can run on soft, she can run on anything. I'm not worried about the conditions. She has that sort of look. It's been a year already filled with breaking curses. We had the curse of Apollo gone with Justify. Now perhaps we can have the first horse that wins the Arc and comes over here and prevails in the Breeders' Cup Turf. I believe there have been 8 other occasions. Don't quote me, but it's somewhere around that number, 7, 8, 9, something like that. That have tried, and they have failed, and they've all been very, very good horses. We will find out if she can be the one to get the job done. Waldgeist and Talismanic were also in that race, though. I have to be honest, I'm very interested in Waldgeist. Right now, he is the one that I'm leaning toward coming out of that race. No disrespect to Enable. I just think she's going to be a terrible underlay, 1 to 2, somewhere in that ballpark. Waldgeist, I thought he ran quite well, and he continues to improve. And Talismanic, look, I don't think he's a superstar, but he's won over here before. And we've seen it in the past. Horses that can successfully ship over here to the United States, don't totally discount them. He's an interesting one, and obviously he goes out for Andre Fabre, knows a thing or two about winning Breeders' Cup races. Talismanic, don't totally write him off just yet. Enable is the headliner. We have a couple of interesting horses here in the United States. We have some interesting Europeans coming over here. We'll find out ultimately, but the Breeders' Cup, she is the star of the Breeders' Cup, Enable. There's no two ways around it. We'll find out if she can become the first to win the Arc and win the Breeders' Cup Turf in the same year.